It's the 6th day of September 2024. Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm Dana Durnford somewhere. I forgot to turn the other screen on. I'm back off the road. We've been on the road for a very long time. We got to talk about Fukushima, my goodness. And it looks like I deleted accidentally. No, it's up there. My phone number, there it is, 709-589-4406. 4406. We had a question from a victim that's in Japan. And see, the chat room was all over. That's so awesome. That's the good thing about here. You'll find the truth pretty quick. Was the food safe in Japan? I believe that was the question. Let me double check. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the craziest story ever. Translucent said, I'm in Japan. Is it safe to eat sushi? And no, it's not. Thank you, Dana Nisana. Dana Nisana got the telephone number in the chat room. He's your moderator. Oh boy. Let's answer that question before I get into the madness that I got for everybody. Japan government promotes the idea that you're a racist, by the way, if you avoid eating the radioactive food from the nuclear wasteland, which is Japan. Japan is a nuclear wasteland. I wouldn't drink the water, and if I wash my clothes in it, I'd throw it away. I'd never take a shower in it. I definitely won't eat the food coming out of Japan to our country. I'm in Canada. A good Canadian will apologize. I'm not sure why, but I'll apologize. Japan picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation just in Fukushima Prefecture. But the food was banned by 14 prefectures. And so every time it rains, the whole country is washing radiation out into the ocean on top of that. And the radiation we're talking about was from 38 reactor cores. Chernobyl was a single one, it was a graphite, it was a small reactor core. These reactors are pure plutonium uranium. I'd be on a plane and out of that nightmare as quick as I could. Nobody is immune to radiation. There's 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. And the quickest way to get sick is just visit Japan, let alone stay there. Authorities hid the radioactive plume forecast to avoid. Let me just put out 7 or 8 headlines so the victim has something to work with here. It's murder to go to Japan. Whoever sent you there was trying to murder you and didn't know it or not. They're trying to murder you. High radiation levels near Tokyo. High radiation. 29 million atoms a square meter on the ground. That never goes away. 6 in 10 Fukushima children with diabetes. There was 13,646 children out of 38,000 with tumors. Thyroid tumors 2 centimeters or so. Their thyroid gland, by the way, is only 2 by 3 centimeters. And so pre-Fukushima was 1 in a million children with thyroid tumors. By the way, thyroid produces the hormones for your whole body. I'm not laughing, that's trying not to scream. Involuntary reflex that never goes away. So it's impossible to breathe the air there without getting radiation, anthropogenic man-made radiation. And let me just show you the dog studies and how that worked out for the doggies. And so we just come back from a almost 3,000 kilometer research expedition, 100 communities, There's 13,000 pictures. I seen more moose than I seen migratory birds, and we're in the migratory bird capital of the planet. There's 46 million migratory birds every year migrate through. Well, there was. Thanks to Fukushima, that's a dud. Oh yeah, right on, hang on. Let me show you some studies on how this stuff works. Make you feel all good inside. We got lots of stuff to cover. I wanted to put out a video because I just slept all day. And I'm just waiting for that stuff to show up. What's going on, Dana? I don't know. That always shows up right away. Am I getting complacent? I don't know what's going on. One more try. Maybe. So, 13,646 children out of 38,000 children. And when it used to be 1 in a million, so when you scale it up, what that means is it's 36.8%. 368,000 out of a million will have thyroid tumors on these little tiny thyroid glands. So the dog studies, for instance, Dr. Raymond Gilmedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute gave the dogs a single inhalation of plutonium, for instance, and plutonium was everywhere. It was found in every surface that was checked. And it doesn't go away for at least 20, this one in particular doesn't go away for about 24,000 years, or 240,000 years rather. It's 10 half-life. Anything to confuse you. I just, when we talk about a decay, it's actually an explosion. It's meant to misrepresent it, but still lull you into complacency. Don't worry, it'll make sense. The study was conducted to determine the biological effects of inhaling plutonium, so they were allowed to live out their life, and death from the radiation occurred about 1.5 to 5.4 years after. So it was 3 tumors in each animal, typically, if one of the tumors didn't kill them right away. They ended up with 3 different tumors: lung, liver, and bones, the skeleton. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and liver occurred about 3 years after exposures. And their kidneys are 50 times more efficient than the humans at removing the plutonium, by the way. Lung tumors were found in 46 dogs, were the second most common cause of death. Bone tumors in 93 dogs were the most common cause of death. Bone tumors. Yummy. And you can't get painkillers for bone tumors. Did you know that? So it's a nasty man-made anthropogenic nuclears, nasty stuff. And just a single exposure, just a single atom can invoke a tumor. But it'll also immediately damage your immune system because you're attacked. You know, the radiation atoms, physical atoms are in your body, they explode. They call it a decay. Because if you tell you it was an explosion, you run away screaming, right? So they call it a decay. But it's an explosion that's almost at the speed of light. And you don't have any immune triggers to defend against, neither does anything else with replicating cells. So it's a nasty, permanent, it's an extermination machine. Okay, so bone tumors in 93 dogs, most common cause of death. Lung tumors in 46 dogs, second most common cause of death. Liver tumors, 20 dogs, were the cause of death in only 2 dogs, but occurred later than tumors in the bones and lungs. In other words, it's getting you one way or another. Tumors in these 3 organs occur in the same animal or competing causes of death. But the finding in dogs suggests similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans. But, and when it comes to butts around here, that's a big deal. But it was discovered that the human kidney was 50 times less efficient than an animal kidneys that removed the plutonium. In other words, the animals removed the plutonium 50 times better than your kidney can. And they all died. All of them. A nasty die. Nasty way to die, too. Okay, let's bring it together. But the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod is the curium isotope. Don't worry about alphas, betas, neutrons, or gammas at this moment here, because it's the biggest byproduct. So there's sort of 1,100 isotopes that you need to worry about. It's the most prolific one. And to give you some context, radioactive fallout in British Columbia, Canada, was at 20 million particles of iodine-129 after Fukushima sustained plume. There was another study at Ottawa, Canada, was 220 million atoms of iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life sustained, which meant it was a continuous plume covering the entire planet. And it looks like this right here. That was after 26 days. But there's so many isotopes that you got this big can of whoop-ass and all the species going on. And curium compound, which is the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods, which is what you call a meltdown, is a curium. And all of this is your hint, really, because they're not going to come out and tell you that the biggest byproduct is the curium isotope. So you had 220 million atoms of iodine-129 per liter. So think what curium is going to be like. And you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And you see what the plutonium done to all the dogs, right? Okay. Hope that answers your question. Let me get back to the madness here. So I'm back from, I'm going to talk about this, but I got some more stuff for you, by the way, that I'm covering anyway, so hang around. Just give me one moment. I still haven't imported it. Okay, so let me start the importing because I might forget, because there's a lot goes on. There's usually 5 people works the equipment that I got at the typical TV station. I got the same equipment, I just don't have the manpower. I'm waiting for Fukushima to grow me a few more limbs. Yeah, here you go. If I don't import stuff and then I forget about it. Fukushima food, I had a folder that I was working on, Fukushima food, that it's one of those time machines back when Fukushima happened. They're the most important stories. James Lucid, check out James Lucid's site. He's just killing it with new songs, anti-nuclear songs. James Lucid has gone to war, folks. I don't know if he knows it or not, but I'm pretty sure he does, but he's gone to war. When you produce music, that's the equivalent of a declaration of war when you're targeting an industry. And nuclear is the mother of all. Alright, let me get this disaster started. So let me talk. We're waiting for that to populate in that I just transferred. So covered almost 3,000 kilometers, and we had a donation from James Lucid for 260, and then another donator, Donna B. I don't want to put her last name because I don't know if I have permission, but donated 650. And so what I decided to do was, and it's hard, sometimes it's hard for people to appreciate my thinking, I'm sure, right? Because I'm not really that vocal because the industry is paying attention to everything. And so we had built a trailer. It took a long time, and we got another Zodiac. And the idea was to go up and get in ponds. And I was out on the motorcycle for weeks, hitting all of these ponds, looking for launch sites. And the idea, we had big plans. And everything kind of just didn't work. Like, I couldn't find ponds that were I can do long-term studies on without traveling very long distances. Very expensive, right? So, but that wasn't deterring me or nothing. I was trying something new, right? And we were going to do water samples, put it under a microscope, and I didn't order in a bulb for that thing yet, and I apologize again for that. And let me put that, I got a piece of paper, I put that on my list to order in the bulbs. That's all that's stopping us, right? And we're still going to do that stuff. And I wasn't finding any migratory birds on the coastline because I was out on a motorcycle doing the whole coastline. You can get down deep into the coastlines. And we've been doing this for years, obviously, right? But we were trying something different. We need an answer is what we're looking for. And then I hurt my lungs. And that's the best way I can describe it. And by the way, I got surgery coming up this week. And so I'll be gone for a little while. But what's important is the story I'm going to tell you tonight. It's very important. So we covered around 1,100 ponds on this expedition. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. And I covered almost 3,000 kilometers of coastline. And there was only 2 ponds where I found birds into it. And one of the ponds, and I'll show you the pictures maybe, one of the ponds, because I took over 13,000 pictures. So I just can't, I've been in a coma all day, right? It's been a really difficult time trying to do this. Once we had the money, then I just went for it. Just to hell with it, let's get it done. And I was driving 18-hour days. Of course, that can get dangerous, and it did, right? And I shut it down, of course, right? Once I realized that I was so tired, was getting dangerous. So 1,100 ponds. Really good visual. There was no fish jumping in any of them. I covered more than that. There's probably 1,400 ponds, but let's lowball it and say 1,100 ponds. No fish jumping. Out in the middle of nowhere. Most beautiful places imaginable. And no migratory birds. There was 2 ponds that had ducks in them. One was a group of ducks that I stopped on the side of the highway, jumped. I got a little Segway that's got a few thousand kilometers on it. I'm pretty good with it. And I shot back to, because sometimes there's nowhere to pull over, right? So you find a road, spot up the road, and then you come back on the Segway, get your pictures rather than turning around on the highway all the time, right? It works really well. And for places that I can't bring the truck to get shots of the coastline, the Segway is. And so we got pictures of all the communities, the names of the communities, and everything like that. That was really important, right, to establish where the pictures were actually from. And on the coastline, I seen 4 moose, which is more animals than I seen of migratory animals. And there should be 46 million birds coming through. Now, there was Cape St. Mary's Bird Sanctuary, and we were there 4 years ago. There was 44,000 gannets. Strictly gannets. And we're also down to the puffin colony. We'll talk about that in a second. So the gannets, there was around 7,000. They told me 7,000 breeding pairs when I was talking to them a couple of weeks ago, and I think I mentioned that, right? And there was at least a couple of thousand there. I got there, the sun had just set. I was racing. I just went for it because I was up in that part of the coastline. It was a 150-kilometer run just before dark, and then hustled out there. Still got the pictures. Let me bring them up, actually. That I can do. Let's bring up some of the pictures. We're going to go through all of it. Not tonight, because I'm too burnt out. And I'd still be going if I could afford it, but it was pretty nice to sleep all day, I can tell you that much. I don't think anybody understands how good that was to sleep all day today. Let me see, September the 5th. Let's go to Gannets. This was Cape St. Mary. So this was very impressive when you see these pictures. Very impressive. That was supposed to be it. I screwed up here. Hang on. So, the tuna yesterday were up by St. Mary's. Oh, there it is. The tunas were up by St. Mary's, the 600-700 pound tunas. They've been showing up for like about 4 years, 5 years, because the ocean is so warm. That's what the locals were telling me. And here we go. I'm going to have to go and do a few other places, but so I took this picture coming up on the race out to get, the sun was setting, and so I just stopped and got a few pictures, and that's it's almost dark, but that's a good camera. And there was there's supposed to be 7, you can call in if you like, by the way. There's supposed to be, and it's 709-589-4406. But I'm generally just putting out an information video to everybody, and particularly the regulars and the people that funded this expedition on top of that. So I'm looking for fledglings, but this is September, and you wouldn't expect to see fledgling, but you can see one right there and one up there where the cursor's to. Another one right there. I got some good pictures of that. There's not a sun, as you've seen, the sun was going down. I was racing down the highway and I was covering last 2 days alone. I covered 943 kilometers of the coastline. And so I still haven't went through these pictures. What I'm trying to do is count the fledglings per the population that I'm seeing, all right? And then work out. And so at the very top of the hill, that's the most successful spot, all right? And there is fledglings, right? And that really, lots of them are two. Now this gannet colony was 44,000. They told me it was 7,000 or 14,000, 7,000 breeding pairs had survived the alleged bird flu 2 years ago. Now the gannets, what they do is they'll dive. They're out on these cliffs. They're completely isolated. They're very high off the coastline, and they're deep divers, so that they don't hang out in the tidal zones or anything like that, right? They're not eating the microscopic animals, but they are eating animals that are bioaccumulating it up the food chain. They're eating herring and anchovy and squid, sardines, or anything like that. Mackerel, maybe. Well, I don't know about mackerel, but herring definitely. And sea bass or anything like that. Any small capelin or something. And it's amazing. It used to be amazing. You see thousands of them, and they're like these rockets. They go up really high, several thousand feet, and they just free fall straight down, and they just go way deep underwater. And so they're not like a seagull, but a seagull forages at the surface. And at the tile zones or McDonald's is where you find most seagulls now, is McDonald's and A&W and stuff like that. So these are very successful animals. But we know, we covered all of this 2 years ago, that the colonies, the major colonies in the Atlantic, Canada, Newfoundland, where I'm to currently, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, there was all kinds of species. And they were attributing bird flu to their mass die-offs. Now, at the same time, they were trying to attribute it to all the other mass die-offs. And this is a scam we've seen many times from this industry. Let me show you after. The buildings that cause all the damage are Reactor 1, Reactor 2, Reactor 3, Reactor 4. And Reactor 4, clearly there's nothing left. Reactor cores and fuel pools are at the top of these 19-story, 65-meter, 190-foot buildings. And that's a German model of the radiation over 5 years. The media, bizarre media, was pretending they're at the top of a building that everything is okay. Now, for the media and the universities, academics worldwide, which is what the poll is about tonight, to do something like that is clearly there's something significant going on, right? Let's talk about the poll for a second. That's not the poll. The poll's over here, Dana. Oh, yes, the poll. Does the media, as academics, universities covering up Fukushima's nuclear meltdowns, prove they're monsters? I think it does. What are you doing, Dana? I'm hoping that you'll click some buttons. Don't forget to get the bell. Ding. That helps. YouTube took down another one of my videos from the pictures, because we've done a 6-video set on 1,900 pictures that were released by TEPCO. And they took down number 4 because I talked about cancer treatments that the World Health Organization didn't agree with, apparently. You're not allowed to talk about any kind of cancer treatment, only what the World Health Organization says is a cancer treatment, which is radiation, on YouTube. Or YouTube will take your videos down, and they took mine down. You got people pretending they're in buildings that don't exist. You got a corporation known as UN that has subsidies like World Health Organization, to have so much power and influence, no sovereignty over any country, but so much power and influence that they're able to jack your hard-earned. It's very difficult to do these videos, and it's like burning books every time they take one of your videos down. And free speech is not just for stuff you agree with; it's for stuff you don't agree with, right? And then corporations apparently don't have to aspire to that kind of... If you look at the United States, for instance, in Canada, these are the Great Lakes, and they're saturated, their shorelines are saturated with nuclear power plants, nuclear dumps, nuclear waste sites, and nuclear fuel fabrication facilities. These are all toxic, hemorrhaging sites. All nuclear power plants, fuel pools are splitting atoms into the ecosystem. The United Nations has many organizations, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IRPA, UNSCLEAR, the ICRP, all of them dedicated to promoting nuclear. And so YouTube is a very unfriendly place for everybody except for victims. And then it's just a killer. So the reactor's detonated. They got the detonations, the videos, the explosions, the remains. This is not a conjecture. This is not an opinion. It's a fact. And so the research expedition, the best way to describe it was brutal. Very depressing for me. And you go in, like, all these freshwater ponds, you're on your way to each place, you're passing just endless ponds on each side of the road up in the middle of nowhere. It's really spectacular. And there's not a fish jumping. There's not a bird in the pond except for 2 ponds. And now, let me come back to the gannet sound, because I can digress pretty darn quick. Go back to the gannets. And so my detractors will take this particular information and say, see, Dana's lying. There's lots of birds. They'd done it when I was out there 4 years ago. And those videos are still available. They took mine down, but they kept theirs up that are saying that I'm misrepresenting or anything. No, we've done epic research expeditions for 4 to 5 months at a time. But this was different, where we're on land, we're doing freshwater and saltwater at the same time, and insects. And there was only 2 places where you smelled the ocean, and these were at the right out in the middle of the Atlantic, the last piece of land, the very tip of the spear. We're gonna, but I have to put all this together in a better format for everybody. Trying to cover everything tonight is simply. Let's look at another one of these pictures. So it was very difficult. There you go. It was very difficult to get a shot of this $1 million research facility that refuses to acknowledge Fukushima happened. And because I was talking to them, right, and they were telling me they died of bird flu. I said, did the 10,350 gray whales die of bird flu too? Because they were emaciated. That takes around 10,000 kilometers. That's a little longer. I said, I heard the caveman died of the bird flu and the saber-toothed tiger, and they hung up on me, right? I don't got no patience for these people. Okay, so let's go back to these pictures again. And so beautiful scenery, but when you get there, what you find, because like there's a couple of thousand birds that we can see, that we can clearly see. But as you get to the cliffs and that, there's not so many fledglings at all. And I might have to shoot out there again. So 1 fledgling, 2 fledglings. So a lot less fledglings when you get to the cliffs. 5, 6. You wouldn't expect, and there's a lot of these fledglings are very recent. None of these can fly, and they all should be able to fly by now. So I'm assuming this was a 2nd generation of eggs. And it was a hit and miss. They were waiting, because they can go a long way offshore, but they've been nesting here for millions of generations, right? But anyway, we'll get to that story when we get to that story. But outside of that, there was nothing. Now, we went into the puffin colonies, and there was nothing. And the rocks are not stained from generations. And so if you remove the seagulls and you remove the crows from the equation, because they're sewage birds, right? So if you remove the seagulls, remove the crows, and remove the cormorants, there's maybe a dozen of them all together in almost 3,000 kilometers. If you remove those 3 birds from the equation, there's nothing left. There is nothing. And we're painstakingly going to go through all of it this week coming up. You know, it's the gulls don't count because they feed at restaurants, they feed at the dump, they're at low tide, but they're not feeding. We've never seen a single bird all year feeding in the ocean on species. That's as broken of a food chain as we're ever going to well, it's not. Seagulls will go eventually too, right? It won't be long down the road before they're going to be. These are the cockroaches of Earth, by the way. They're considered the cockroaches of this planet. Now, I've done expeditions for many years. Difficult, long, brutal research expeditions, 4 to 5 months at a time without coming home. And we being me and the people that supported me, we left no stones unturned. I'm very, very dedicated to the things I'm doing. It's not a game. And so I'm out there for 4 to 5 months at a time. I'm attacked the entire time, but I have the moral high ground because they're denying that this happened. But the implications of it, and these are different models from different institutions. This is 19.5 days, 468 hours of radioactive fallout. So every model shows us an extinction level event. Now, this was 6 years of British Columbia's coastline. And that's different than what I'd done last week, where you had to take a boat, and you got 27,000 islands. It's millions and millions of sunkers, rocks slightly below the surface, ready to wreck your boat. There's massive tide exchanges, incredible seas. And you have to navigate all that into the most pristine areas. And the models, like when you look at the area, I covered all coast of British Columbia, Canada to Alaska. I'm very methodical in doing my work too. And so I'm doing the same thing where I take GPSs and pictures of every spot so that it can be replicated. The species to your left were missing. This is the first year of the research. You realize that the species now are gone. They were there in 2011, now they're gone. And there was an incredible amount, around 7,000 visible species. But there, some that are really visible, like starfish and sea anemones, sea urchins, very visible stuff, right? Starfish, and each species of the 80 species come in multiple vibrant colors. There were 74 species of sponges. They come in multiple vibrant colors. There's coral. There was an incredible amount of shellfish too. And shellfish, you had snails and many different types of snails, 10, 12 different types of snails, some of them huge, and you see just massive amounts everywhere you went. There was scallops, different types of scallops, different types of abalones, which are very big, clam. There's many different types of clam. There's the little necks, the manillas, the razorback clams. There was the mussel shells. There was incredible diversity of these whelks and these little cone-shaped snails. That there's so many diversity. They're all gone, and I mean they're gone. They're literally gone. There was 76 species of sea anemones. Each species came in multiple vibrant colors. They're gone. They never came back. So we went back for another ridiculous 5 more years. And those species never came back. That means they're not coming back. So if you plow in a healthy coastline, like if I go out and take a dump truck and a backhoe and I go out and dig all this up and take it away, the species will repopulate it from both sides and down deeper, right? Because that's prime real estate. But they didn't. And then the models of the radioactive fallout doesn't just cover Japan. They definitely cover Japan. Covers the entire planet. And it does that, and this particular model is 20 days to your left and 21 days above me. And this data is based upon TEPCO's, which is a corporation that has a lot to lose, total release evaluation. But when you don't need TEPCO because the buildings are gone. So there's around 8 reactor cores at the top of each of the building. And to think anything less is to live in denial. To pretend that these species didn't exist, which a lot of my detractors do. Not a lot, but all of them. And pretend that doesn't matter on top of that. gone, never coming back. Which means you sterilized the Pacific Ocean, which you broke the food chain. You destroyed it right away. On top of that, the airborne radioactive fallout meant you destroyed the phytoplankton, all the fresh water, and all the seas, which is breaking the food chain, because that's the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain and carbon sequestering chain, right? So the species to your left, there was 700 algae. Now there's just kelp cabbage and kelp weed. Kelp weed is the most dominant of all oceans. And I shouldn't be able to put my Zodiac up on a beach because sea urchins would normally wreck it, right? I mean, when you ban the food in 14 prefectures by 55 countries for a decade, and that's Google Maps. I put a pin on each one of the prefectures where the food was banned by 55 countries for a decade. You're going to ban it, and I mean, they're growing food right alongside the 1-ton bags. They're so far out of control, clearly there never was any control. Otherwise, you would never ever attempt to do stuff like this. And so when you got all your medias, and this is just a fraction of them, this is ABC Australia, Cecilia Vega behind me, but when you got BBC, CBS, CNN, ABC Australia coming out and telling you that they're top of a building that don't exist, these are journalists, they're of the highest caliber. They're making $1 million each a year or more. When they're coming out and telling you they're on top of a nuclear reactor that clearly doesn't exist, then you're in real trouble. Now, we've done the research expeditions, and let me tell you something. This operation was put together so I can go anywhere, and that's exactly what I'd done. And I'd done that because that's what I was dealing with. I needed to be able to go anywhere and keep going. I needed to continue and not stop until I was happy. And I remember the first couple of years, there was a lot of people trying to get me to come home. But some of these were good and some of them weren't. But I understood that you had to complete the mission, to quantify the assertion, if the assertion suggested this was an extinction event. And it doesn't suggest it's an extinction event, it's an extinction event. This is unassailable. This is unquestionable. And I provide GPSs of everywhere I went. And nobody's ever went out and debunked me, and they certainly would have if they could have. There was a lot of people attacked me every day that I was on the ocean for 4 to 5 months a year, year after year. Destroyed. I don't have a reputation anymore. But I do have facts. I do have the documentation, and I have punched in the time. I have paid my dues in every sense of that word. And I'll never be perfect. I realize that. And I'm not the healthiest person on the planet. But there's something more important than TV or Hollywood or everything else is the species. And without them, we can't have a future. Your loved ones can't have a future. My loved ones can't have a future. And all the puppies can't have a future. And so the species have been exterminated. Pretending that didn't happen is a huge issue because we're stuck in this twilight zone where the world is suggesting that the reactors didn't melt down. They're on top of buildings that don't exist. You got the universities and the medias and the academics all coming out and asserting that everything is okay by using just inconceivable propaganda. So, I mean, this is insane that media, I don't know of another example where media is claiming they're on top of a building that don't exist. And what would be the catalyst for them to do something like that? That's the plutonium dispersal, but that's only after 20 days. Remember the studies on the dogs I showed you earlier? Well, guess what? Radiation levels up on the West Coast was over 1 million times normal. This was a French study of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 covering the entire planet, which pulses energy 600 feet. So it's a snowstorm, the animosity equivalent of a snowstorm that never goes away, it never stops snowing, and it never melts. and it pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second. And so, pretending this is not happening, not coming up with any kind of solutions whatsoever to mitigate the awful effect on all species, not just humanity, is simply not acceptable. Humanity is better than that. And so this industry has co-opted your education system, your medias, and your TV sets. But that doesn't mean that it's okay. It doesn't mean it's acceptable. It doesn't mean it's not a crime. It doesn't mean you shouldn't make a stand. It doesn't mean that you should just give up because you don't understand the subject. Because once you absorb this, you can extrapolate on your own. And I'm feeding you as much as I can the information, the documentation that is unquestionable. You don't have to be an academic and an engineer or a nuclear scientist to appreciate the buildings are gone. You don't. And the implications for it, they didn't ban the food in 14 prefectures because it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine. There wasn't 865,000 cancers in the first year because it's harmless and innocuous and benign. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. And cancer isn't the only illness or disease or autoimmune deficiency or injury or illness that's going to manifest from breathing, drinking, eating, consuming that. And every nuclear power plant, except for a few on the planet, is surrounded by farms. So this industry is out to get you, and they have a final solution. The final solution is dumb you down so you can't fight back, you can't question them, you can't hold them accountable, and that they're invincible, they're immune, and they're not. We clearly identify all the most important facets of this story. We've done the research. This is clear cut, and yet there's no movement. There's no media's talking about this in a lucid manner. There's nobody out there articulating any of the information I showed you whatsoever. Like actually educating the population. That's our biggest problem right now. The population is not educated. And I want to do a show tonight because I've been gone all week. And I want to share with you just the mind-numbing horror of what I just experienced that escapes the consciousness of the population, but could change the world for the better many ways over. We got this, both sides. This is the Pacific and the Atlantic now confirmed. So 1,100 ponds, almost 3,000 kilometers of coastline, and documented. As you'll see over the next week, I'll provide the documentation for these assertions, and we'll methodically go through it. And so the scientists can't say they didn't know, because we provided the information all these years, all the research, we provided all these years. And so if you want to beat them in the conversation, I just gave you your screen capture the stuff I gave you. You can beat them in that conversation, period. Any blogger out there can tear this industry apart now. And my site is just jacked with this information, right? It's jacked with it. I'm burnt out. I slept all day, literally in a coma. I got up for a couple hours, and a beautiful day. I went for a bike ride up the coast. And because I can't stop. I can't shut this off, my brain off. I can't switch this nightmare off. Every dream I have is a nightmare. And so you wonderful people make my life so much. At least I know there's some good people left on the planet. And that's where I get the energy. I mean, 865,000 cancers in the first year. But it's not Fukushima, of course. What else is it? So they just say the stuff and people buy into it, but they don't teach critical thinking for decades and decades. I don't know if they ever did, tell you the truth. And that's enough information anyway tonight about the expeditions till we get started, that to give you a synopsis. And it's just absolute nightmare. It's absolute nightmare that we just seen. But, there was some gannets, some of my detractors, they'll take that and say, Dana's wrong. See, look, he found birds. He's lying to you. It's not an extinction event. Well, just because one species which is decimated, by the way, there's 44,000 birds there. The last time I went there, now there's only 14,000, and we can't prove that. All I seen was a couple of thousand. And that the hatchlings and fledglings are way late in the year. You can look it up on your own. They should all be flying. I didn't see any, I don't think. Maybe one that was capable of flying. We're going to go through it all. The puffin colonies are gone. They're empty. They weren't there. They're putting out recycled videos from several years back. Because, and I'll show you that documentation. It's absurd. It's absurd. Over 100 communities. And that's not just communities. We're talking about these huge, massive bays we're talking about that were everywhere you can get pictures. We're down getting the pictures, and we're going to go through all that next week, maybe the week after, because there's an awful lot of it. It's a ridiculous amount of it. All right, let's come over and close the poll. Let's come over and close the poll. Where's the poll to? Hello, everybody. Does the media, academics, and universities covering up Fukushima's nuclear meltdowns prove there really is monsters? And we know. We know the answer to that, don't we? So if you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And hang around. This next couple of weeks are going to be quite the trip. It's going to be quite the experience. I'll take you along for the ride. And I like to get some more research in. All I can think about is going to bed again right now. But you know how I'll wake up in the morning. I'm ready to face the most evilest thing in human history. I'll see everybody on the next show. I think might be Sunday. I'm not sure. But once we start, we'll get through all of this stuff. Have a great night. We're going to play James. Go over to James' site. He's got incredible amount of music. Recent music tonight. On top of that, I'm going to play one of them for you. Have a great night, folks. In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before.
his swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.